My name is Jessica Hartley, and I trusted my parents with the one person I love more than anything, my daughter Emily. But when they returned from their weekend trip without her, my father simply said, "Let her learn some manners," like abandoning a 6-year-old was discipline. I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. Until that moment, in the same kitchen I was raised in, I realized I'd been blind to who they really were and what they were capable of. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments. I want to know how far these stories travel. And if you've ever had to protect your child from people who were supposed to protect you, this one's for you. It was already past sunset when I pulled into the gravel drive of my parents' farmhouse. The old maple trees rustled against the siding like they always had, and the porch light flickered like it always did. Familiar, comforting. But tonight, everything felt wrong. My stomach churned in that quiet, warning way. They were supposed to be home by now. Mom had texted me that morning. "Heading back this afternoon, Emily's been a sweetheart." That was it. No pictures, no follow-up, just enough to lull me into complacency. I checked my phone again for the 100th time. Still no response to my last message. "Let me know when you're an hour out. I'll bring Emily her stuffed giraffe." That giraffe had been her comfort since teething. She couldn't sleep without it. Then I heard the door slam. I ran to the front hallway just in time to see my dad, Robert Hartley, set his keys down on the hall table with his usual sigh of irritation. My mother, Susan, followed close behind, shaking rain off her coat and mumbling something about these Vermont nights getting colder earlier every year. But there was no third voice, no small footsteps, no Emily. My heart dropped. "Where's Emily?" I asked, my voice tight but steady. My father didn't even meet my eyes. He just peeled off his gloves and said flatly, "Let her learn some manners." My whole body went cold. "What?" I whispered, because I couldn't have heard that right. I couldn't have. My mom stepped past him, rolling her eyes. "She was being impossible, Jess. Talking back, refusing to eat what we served. We warned her." I stepped forward so fast I nearly knocked the chair over. "What did you do?" Dad finally looked at me, but with that smug tilt to his head that always meant you're overreacting. He crossed his arms like a man proud of a job well done. "We left her at the food court in Albany. Told her someone would help her find her way back once she calmed down." A scream ripped through me before I could stop it. "You left my 6-year-old daughter alone." The kitchen, with its cheerful floral curtains and vintage mugs, filled with something I'd never felt here before, rage. Thick, electric, and suffocating. My mother huffed like I was the one being difficult. "Jessica, we made sure she was in a public place. It's not like we abandoned her in the woods." I couldn't believe what I was hearing, couldn't believe this was real. "She's 6, I shrieked. 6 years old in a strange city, are you insane? Don't talk to us like that in our house," my dad snapped, stepping toward me. But I didn't flinch, I couldn't. I felt like my body was shaking from the inside out. "I trusted you with her," I said, quieter now, my voice breaking. "I trusted you. How could you do this to Emily? To me?" My mother scoffed again and started unpacking grocery bags like nothing had happened. "She's spoiled, Jess. She needs to toughen up. You're too soft on her and it shows." That's when something snapped, because I'd spent my entire life trying to earn their approval. Even when I married someone they didn't like. Even when I raised Emily the way I saw fit. I still sent holiday cards. Still brought casseroles. Still came to this creaky old farmhouse with the hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd see me. See us, as enough. But in that moment, as I stood trembling in the kitchen while my parents talked about my child like she was some unruly puppy, I realized something bone deep. They didn't see Emily as a person, and they never truly saw me as a mother. And I was done. Done protecting their image. Done giving them the benefit of the doubt. Done letting them near my daughter. Without another word, I turned and stormed toward the door. My father yelled something behind me, something about being dramatic, but I didn't stop. I threw myself into the driver's seat and fumbled for the GPS. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. Albany, nearest police station. My baby was out there, alone, because her own grandparents decided to teach her a lesson. I floored the gas and didn't look back. The highway was a blur of red taillights and slick, dark pavement. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and the clock on the dashboard ticked past midnight as if taunting me for being too late. I hadn't cried yet. Not fully. The panic kept the tears at bay. I needed to stay clear, sharp, because if I broke down now, I might not get back up. Every mile I drove away from that farmhouse felt like peeling off a layer of denial I hadn't even known I was still clinging to. My parents weren't just strict or old-fashioned. They were cruel. And somehow I had let that cruelty near my daughter. Every few exits, I pulled into rest stops, frantically calling every emergency contact I could think of, local police departments, hospitals, hotels. Most were polite but unhelpful. "No missing child report filed," they'd say. "Do you have an exact address where she was left? Can you confirm who dropped her off?" How do you explain that your own parents abandoned your 6-year-old daughter in a food court like she was a shopping bag someone forgot? Somewhere around 3:00 a.m., I parked outside a 24-hour diner and sat in the lot under a flickering security light, trying to breathe. My hands trembled as I pulled up Emily's school photo on my phone. Her bright eyes and toothy smile stared back at me. I whispered like she could somehow hear me through the glass screen. "Hold on, baby. Mommy's coming." When I finally reached the Albany police dispatch, the officer on the phone paused before asking, "Is your daughter's name Emily Hartley?" Yes, that's her." "She's here, ma'am. She's safe. She's been with us since about 6:30 p.m. yesterday." That's when the dam broke. I cried so hard I couldn't speak, couldn't even thank him. My head fell against the steering wheel and I just sobbed, sharp, breathless sobs that rattled through me like broken glass. They had left her for nearly 12 hours. She'd been with strangers longer than she'd ever been away from me in her life. When I finally pulled into the Albany precinct lot, dawn was breaking, gray light stretching across the buildings like a sigh. My heart raced as I opened the door to the station. The front desk officer recognized me instantly and waved me through. "She's in the kids' room, third door on the left," she said gently. "She's been real brave." I hadn't even touched the door handle before it flew open from the inside. "Mommy!" She ran into my arms like she'd been holding her breath the entire time. I dropped to my knees and wrapped her up, pressing kisses into her hair as I rocked her back and forth. I didn't even care that I was sobbing in public, clutching her like I might lose her all over again. "I'm so sorry," I whispered over and over. "I'm so sorry, baby." But Emily just smiled up at me, eyes still puffy but calm now. "I remembered everything you taught me, Mommy," she said proudly. "When Grandma and Grandpa left, I stayed where they told me to. I didn't talk to strangers. And when the police lady came, I remembered your number." I couldn't breathe. My 6-year-old had done everything right, and my parents had done everything wrong. A kind-looking officer stepped into the hallway behind us and gave me a small nod. "She's a sharp little girl. Said you always told her to be brave and stay smart." Most kids her age would have panicked. I wanted to feel proud, but guilt twisted in my chest like a vice. She should never have had to be brave, not like this. On the drive back, Emily slept in the backseat, clutching her giraffe, which I had finally remembered to grab from the farmhouse before leaving. Every so often, I'd glance at her in the mirror, her lips parted in sleep, one hand tangled in the stuffed animal's ear. How do you explain to a child that the people you once called Grandma and Grandpa had left her behind like she didn't matter? You don't. You show her with your actions that you will never do the same. That night, I made her favorite soup, chicken and stars from the can, the only thing she'd eat when she was little. I tucked her in early, running my fingers through her hair until her breath slowed and deepened. Then I sat alone on the edge of the couch, listening to the ticking clock and thinking. Tomorrow I would confront them, not just for me, but for her, because Emily deserved to know that love doesn't leave you behind. The next day the house was quiet, but not in a peaceful way. It felt like the kind of silence that settles after an argument, even though no words had yet been spoken. Emily was curled up on the couch with her favorite blanket, watching a cartoon, her small frame dwarfed by the oversized pillows. I stood in the kitchen stirring soup that I knew she might not finish. My hands moved automatically, but my mind was spinning. How do you sit across from the people who endangered your child and pretend it's just another Tuesday? You don't. You set the table like you're setting a stage. You rehearse every sentence like a closing argument, and you prepare yourself to lose whatever illusion of family you were still clinging to. By the time the sun dipped below the hills and headlights cut across the gravel driveway, I had already made my decision. Tonight would be the last time I let them gaslight me into silence. Emily was dozing gently on the couch when the front door creaked open. My mother stepped in first, acting like nothing had happened, like we hadn't just driven 5 hours home from a police station. She shrugged off her coat and sniffed the air. "Smells like soup," she said, in that sing-song voice she used when she wanted to pretend things were normal. "Emily must be hungry." My father came in behind her, muttering about how people these days coddle kids until they can't think straight. I stood at the far end of the living room, arms crossed. Calm, steady. Emily stirred, blinking awake. She didn't jump up or smile like she usually did when she saw them. Instead, she just stared. Quiet. My mother caught sight of me and gave that condescending smile I'd grown up with. The one that said, "Don't start, Jessica. You always make things worse." I gestured to the couch. "She's sleeping, keep your voice down," my father scoffed. "She's lucky we didn't leave her longer, maybe then she'd learn how to listen." That was it. "Do you hear yourself?" I said quietly. "Do you actually understand what you did? You left a child, your granddaughter, alone in a city, and you think she should be grateful." "She was being impossible," my mother snapped, her voice sharper now. "Throwing a fit in the restaurant, refusing to say thank you, whining about everything. Honestly, Jessica, we were doing you a favor. That girl has no discipline." "That girl," I said, my voice breaking, "is 6 years old." They said nothing. Just stood there like they were waiting for me to get over it, like I was the one causing the disruption. "Do you know what she said to me?" I continued. "When I picked her up from the police station, she said, 'I remembered the rules you taught me, Mommy.'" She stayed calm. She didn't cry. She found help. She did everything right. "And you abandoned her and walked away like she was a lost purse." My father rolled his eyes and sat down in his usual chair, the one with the faded armrests. "You've always been dramatic." "No," I said, louder now. "I've always tried to keep the peace. I've always tried to believe you were doing your best. But now I see exactly who you are." My mother huffed. "If you're just going to stand there and lecture us, we'll go. We came to check on Emily, not be interrogated." At that moment, a small voice from the couch cut through the room like a knife. "I don't want to see them again." We all froze. Emily sat up slowly, clutching her giraffe, eyes wide but clear. Her voice didn't shake. She wasn't crying. She just looked done. My mother blinked. "Emily, sweetheart." "No," Emily said again, scooting back into the couch cushions. "You left me, and Mommy had to come get me. I don't want to go with you again." My mother's mouth opened and closed. My father looked away. Emily turned to me, her bottom lip quivering now. "Do I have to see them again, Mommy?" I walked over and sat beside her, pulling her into my lap. I looked my parents square in the eyes as I said, "Not if you don't want to." The room filled with a cold silence. Not rage, not chaos, just truth. My parents didn't apologize. Of course they didn't. They gathered their things in stiff silence and left without a word. The door clicked shut behind them like a final punctuation mark. After they were gone, I held Emily close, her small hand resting on my heart. "I don't feel sad," she whispered. "Me neither," I said. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. Because standing up for Emily was the easy part. Now I had to protect her from everything that would come next. I used to think safety came from familiarity, from the walls you knew, the smells of old books and antique furniture, the steady hum of a childhood home. But now, standing in the middle of a tiny 2-bedroom apartment with creaky floors and beige walls that hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in years, I realized something different. Safety wasn't about comfort. It was about freedom. 2 weeks after the confrontation, I signed the lease. It wasn't fancy. The apartment sat above a closed-down bookstore in downtown Burlington. The stairs creaked when you climbed them. The bathroom mirror had a crack shaped like a question mark, and the kitchen could barely fit 2 people without a shuffle. But the moment I walked in and saw the sunlight pouring across the worn hardwood floors, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. Emily clung to my side as we explored it for the first time. She didn't ask why we weren't at Grandma and Grandpa's anymore. She didn't ask about the toys we left behind. She just looked around the bare walls and said, "Can I put my giraffe on the windowsill?" "You can put it anywhere you want," I told her, smiling. "This place is ours." The first night was chaotic in a strangely wonderful way. We didn't have a dining table yet, so we ate sandwiches on a blanket spread across the floor. Emily wore her pajamas and helped me tape little paper stars to the wall above her mattress. It wasn't much, but she squealed like it was magic. "You're the best roommate," she whispered as I tucked her in. "Even better than Grammy's house." I kissed her forehead and whispered back, "You're mine and I'll always keep you safe." After she fell asleep, I sat on the edge of my new twin mattress. No headboard, no frame, just a box spring and a borrowed comforter, and opened my laptop. I had put in my notice at my office job back in Montpelier and transitioned to remote work. A blessing, really. I could code from anywhere, and this little corner of peace would be the heart of everything now. I set up a tiny desk in the corner of the living room, just enough space for my laptop, a coffee mug, and a small succulent Emily picked out at the grocery store. I worked while she played on the rug beside me with crayons and cereal boxes, occasionally holding up her drawings like they were blueprints for a brighter life. She drew a lot of houses those first few days, but never with 3 figures. Always 2, her and me, and always smiling. We made a game out of decorating. Emily insisted on helping with everything from assembling furniture to choosing which drawer would be the snack drawer. "No adults allowed to touch it," she declared solemnly, putting a juice box and 2 granola bars inside. "Noted," I smiled. We didn't have a lot, but we had each other. And for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't wake up with dread in my chest. I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't checking my tone or shrinking my opinions. I could breathe. We lit candles at night, played music while we cleaned, and made soup from scratch, Emily standing on a chair to stir the pot with too much pride for someone still wearing sparkly socks. "This feels like a real house," she told me one evening as we cuddled on the couch, both of us wrapped in the same old blanket from our former guest room. "It is a real house," I replied, "because it has us in it." She nodded solemnly. No yelling. No scary rules. Just soup and drawing and snuggles. Exactly. I didn't tell her about the credit card I had to open for the moving truck, or the way my hands shook when I checked my account balance after rent and groceries. She didn't need to know yet how tight things were, or how much I was stretching to make it look effortless. She just needed to know she was safe. Every night before bed, I would sit by her mattress, still on the floor, and listen as she whispered updates from her dreams. "I'm flying a plane tonight," she said one night, eyes barely open. "Can we fly over Grammy's house?" "We'll go wherever you want," I whispered back, "but only if you're the pilot." And then I'd watch her drift to sleep, a quiet smile on her face, and think, this is what healing looks like. Not loud, not triumphant, just quiet, stubborn hope. One spoonful of soup, one drawing taped to the fridge, one "I love you" at a time. And I realized I didn't need their house, their approval, their toxic patterns. I just needed this. Our little apartment above a forgotten bookstore. Our new beginning. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. And maybe, just maybe, it was the very first step toward something bigger than survival. The knock came just before noon on a Wednesday. I had just finished a video call with my team, and Emily was busy drawing dinosaurs on sticky notes and sticking them across the apartment like prehistoric breadcrumbs. The window was open a crack, letting in the crisp early spring breeze, and for a moment it felt like everything was going to be okay. Then came the knock, firm, official. Not the kind neighbors used when dropping off a borrowed mug. Not the tap, tap, tap of Amazon leaving a box on the steps. Something in my stomach sank. I opened the door to find a woman standing there, early 40s, crisp blazer, a black leather folder in hand. Her expression was practiced concern, polite but detached. "Sika Hartley?" she asked. "Yes. I'm with Vermont Child and Family Services. Do you have a moment?" It's funny how quickly your body recognizes danger. My smile froze, my heart raced, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I already knew who had sent her. I stepped aside slowly. "Of course, come in." Emily looked up from her dino fossil gallery with a curious smile. "Hi," the woman returned it gently. "Hello, sweetheart. I'm just here to talk with your mom for a bit, okay?" Emily nodded, then resumed coloring with complete innocence. I watched her, that small, trusting back turned to us, and felt a storm rising behind my ribs. We sat at the tiny table. I poured 2 cups of tea. My hands didn't shake, but only because I willed them not to. I understand Emily was recently found alone in Albany, the woman began, opening her folder. I just want to clarify a few things. Yes, I said calmly. She was abandoned there by my parents. Her grandparents. That gave her pause. You weren't with her. No, I replied. They had taken her for a weekend visit. I believed she was safe with them. She jotted a note, slow and deliberate. And when did you realize she'd been left behind? When they came home without her. I didn't bother hiding the edge in my voice. They told me it was a lesson for her behavior. The woman blinked. That's highly irregular. You're telling me. She turned a page in her file. We received an anonymous tip claiming Emily had been wandering alone and unsupervised for hours, and that her home environment may be unstable due to a reactionary and emotionally volatile parent. The words hit like ice water. My mouth went dry. I stared at her for a long second before answering. Let me guess, I said. The anonymous tipster also conveniently forgot to mention that the emotionally volatile parent drove through the night to retrieve her child from the police station, after the grandparents dumped her like luggage. She didn't respond, which meant she already knew. This wasn't an investigation driven by concern. This was punishment, retribution, weaponized control. I got up and walked to the side table, pulled out the manila folder I'd started keeping, just in case. Inside were copies of the police report from Albany, the officer's statement, my messages confirming drop-off times, and even a written note from the officer who called me that night. I handed it over. I've documented everything, I said. I also submitted a formal statement to the department the day after it happened. I've got witnesses, timestamps, everything. She took the folder and flipped through it, her expression shifting ever so slightly. Calmer, less suspicious. I believe you, she said finally, closing the file. Honestly, it's clear you've taken every step to ensure Emily's safety, but since we received the tip, I had to follow protocol. Of course, I said, my voice hollow now. Of course you did. She glanced at Emily, who was now singing softly under her breath, completely unbothered by the storm swirling around her. I'm sorry you had to go through this, the woman added. But just so you're aware, another complaint like this could trigger a deeper investigation. And there it was, the warning, not from her but from them. They couldn't win by shaming me. They couldn't control me anymore. So now they were threatening the one thing they knew would destroy me, my child. She left with a polite nod and a soft, take care. I waited until the door clicked shut before I allowed myself to move. I walked slowly to the window, pulling the curtain aside. No one was on the street, but I still felt watched. I crouched beside Emily and kissed the top of her head. She smiled up at me. That lady was nice. She was, I whispered, but Mommy's going to make sure she never has to come back. That night, long after Emily fell asleep, I stared at my laptop screen, open to the inspector's office email. I had a choice. I could stay quiet and pray they stopped, or I could fight back on paper with facts, with every ounce of truth I had left. And for the first time in years, I didn't hesitate. I started typing. By the time the sun rose, I was still at the kitchen table, the glow of my laptop casting shadows on the wall. My coffee had gone cold. My fingers were stiff. But every word I typed brought me closer to the woman I used to be, the one I thought I'd lost under years of manipulation, appeasement, and silence. The complaint wasn't angry. It was surgical, precise. A timeline of abandonment with the police report attached. Screenshots of text messages from that weekend. A copy of the formal visitation agreement I'd drafted with my parents months earlier. Evidence that I had acted immediately and responsibly the moment I found out Emily was left behind. I ended the letter with a simple truth. I am not a perfect mother, but I am a present one, a protective one, and I will no longer allow individuals who endanger my daughter's well-being to hide behind the word family. Then I pressed send, and I didn't cry. Not this time. After that, I turned to the second letter, the harder one, the one to my parents. It took me an hour to write 3 paragraphs. I didn't include emotion. No pleas, no rage, just facts, boundaries. I explained that all future contact must be in writing, that they were no longer allowed unsupervised visits with Emily, that if they continued harassing me, personally or legally, I would file for a restraining order. I signed it, Jessica Hartley, Emily's mother, not your child anymore. I printed it, folded it with shaking hands, and slid it into an envelope with a return receipt form. Then I sat back and let the silence settle in. For once, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. That night, I made Emily's favorite dinner, pasta with too much cheese and none of the vegetables. We ate on the floor again, laughing as she dropped sauce on her socks and declared them tomato toasties. After bedtime, I stood in her doorway for a long time, watching her chest rise and fall beneath the blanket. There was still so much I didn't know. How much damage had been done. How many quiet fears she carried that she didn't have words for yet. How this would shape the way she trusted people, especially those who said they loved her. But I did know this. She wouldn't have to carry it alone. That night, I sat in the dim light of our apartment and finally let myself feel everything. The betrayal, the rage, the loneliness, but also the strength. Not the loud kind, not the Hollywood kind. The kind that slips in when no one is watching. The kind that rebuilds you from the inside out. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to make a scene. The truth was loud enough. I opened my journal, one I hadn't touched since Emily was a baby, and wrote, Day 1. No more pretending, no more permission. They don't get to decide who I am anymore. This is mine, all of it. A week later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from the inspector's office. The subject line was clear, case closed. Their investigation found no evidence of neglect or instability in Emily's care. In fact, they commended the speed of my response and the documentation I provided. I read the letter 3 times, and on the 4th I smiled, because now I had proof that I wasn't unstable. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't the emotional child they'd tried to reduce me to. I was a mother, and I had done right by my child. That same day, I dropped the letter from my parents into the mailbox. I didn't linger. I didn't need to reread it, because the moment it left my hand, something else left with it. That invisible leash they kept wrapped around my throat for years. It was gone now, and the air had never tasted so free. It started with a text from my cousin Jenna. Hey, were you really investigated by Child Services? Aunt Susan said something at dinner, and I just wanted to hear it from you. I stared at the message for a long time, my stomach turning cold. Jenna wasn't close to me. We'd always been friendly, distant cousins who saw each other at weddings and holidays. But the fact that she was reaching out at all meant something was off. I called her. She picked up immediately. I'm so sorry to bring this up, she said, her voice low, like she didn't want to be overheard. It was just weird. Everyone was at Aunt Marion's for dinner in Rutland, and your mom brought you up. Casually, like she was just so worried about how you're coping. I didn't say anything, just waited. She said Emily was found wandering alone in Albany, Jenna continued, and that it was a miracle someone called the police. Then your dad chimed in and said he hoped the state was keeping an eye on you for Emily's sake. There was a long silence. She said that out loud, I asked finally. In front of the whole family, Jenna hesitated. Yeah, and no one really said anything. I mean, Uncle Dennis looked uncomfortable. Aunt Marion asked if Emily was okay, but no one pushed back. Of course they didn't, not because they believed it, but because no one wanted to get involved. They're lying, I said flatly. They left Emily at a food court to teach her a lesson. I filed the report, not them, and the inspector cleared me completely. I figured, Jenna whispered. I mean, I knew it didn't sound like you. I closed my eyes, my chest aching. They're trying to destroy my credibility, Jenna, because I stopped playing nice. I'm so sorry, she said again. It just felt wrong. I thought you should know. After we hung up, I stared out the window for a long time. The apartment was quiet, Emily was at school, the dishes were done, and the only sound was the faint hum of the radiator. But the silence wasn't peaceful today. It was heavy, humiliating. Because somewhere in a cozy dining room in Rutland, over pot roast and family photos, my parents were rewriting the story, and no one was stopping them. I imagined my name said in hushed tones. Jessica S. always been a little intense. Maybe she's overwhelmed. Maybe it's just post-divorce stress. Never what actually happened. Never what they actually did. When Emily came home that afternoon, I put on a smile. We made grilled cheese and danced in the kitchen. But the whole time, the words swirled like poison in the back of my mind. They're better off with stricter guidance. That's what my mother had apparently said. As if Emily were some wild animal I couldn't tame. As if love, patience, and gentleness were weaknesses. As if abuse disguised as discipline was the answer. Later that night, after Emily was asleep and the lights were low, I opened my notebook and wrote down a question I wasn't sure I could answer. What do you do when your parents try to turn your family against you? Not with fists, not with shouting, but with careful lies whispered into casseroles and passed between cousins. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was a campaign. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But for the first time, I understood something chilling. They weren't finished. They couldn't hurt me directly anymore, not without consequences, but they could poison the water, one drop at a time. And the longer I stayed silent, the more their version would become the truth by default. I closed the notebook, hands trembling. It was time to decide, was I going to keep hiding, or was I ready to fight for my name? I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Not Jenna, not my aunt, definitely not my parents. I just showed up, 30 minutes into dinner, wearing my calmest sweater and my steadiest face, clutching a manila folder under one arm like it was a weapon. And maybe it was. The dining room in Aunt Marian's house hadn't changed in 20 years. Same brass chandelier, same lace table runner, same floral wallpaper that always made me feel like I was being watched by 1,000 Victorian ghosts. The table was full. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, 3 different pies, and a dozen faces that all turned toward me at once. Forks froze. Conversations halted mid-sentence. I walked in like I had every right to be there, because I did. "Jessica," my mother said, standing up with a smile so fake I could see the corners twitch. "What a surprise." She had pearls on. She always wore pearls when she was trying to perform morality. My father leaned back in his chair, eyebrows raised in faux confusion. "Didn't expect to see you tonight. I figured it was time I joined the family again," I said, placing the folder on the buffet table. "Considering I've been the topic of discussion." No one laughed, not even politely. My Uncle Dennis cleared his throat. "Well, dinner's still warm. You're welcome to—" "Thanks," I interrupted, "but I didn't come for chicken." That's when I saw it, the flicker. The "oh no, she's not playing" flicker that darted across my mother's face before she caught it. "Jessica, this isn't the time," she said lightly, reaching for her wine glass. "Let's just enjoy the meal. We've all had a rough couple of months." Aunt Marian gave me a nervous smile. "Why don't you sit down and—" "Actually," I said, voice sharp but quiet, "I'd like to clear something up first." My father leaned forward, folding his hands like a pastor about to preach. "If this is about that little misunderstanding—" "You mean the little misunderstanding where you left my child in Albany and told people I was the one being investigated?" He blinked, but the smirk was already forming. "Oh, Jessica," he said with a sigh, "always so dramatic. We were worried about you, that's all. Families talk when they're concerned." "No," I said, stepping forward. "Families lie when they're trying to cover their cruelty." Murmurs at the table. Someone coughed. My cousin Laura looked down at her plate. My mother's smile vanished. "This really isn't appropriate." "Neither was telling people I was unstable," I shot back, "or implying Emily was unsafe with me." "You were investigated, weren't you?" my uncle asked. "That's what we heard." I turned to him slowly. "Yes, because someone anonymously called child services, and then I cleared it immediately because it was false, and I can prove it." I picked up the folder and held it in the air. "You want to see the police report, the inspector's letter clearing me, the timestamps, the messages from that night?" Silence. No one reached for it. They didn't need to see it. They just didn't want to admit it. My father chuckled, a cold little sound that cut through the hush. "You always did like a scene." That's when my uncle, his voice oddly gentle, said something that nearly broke me. "You've pulled away from everyone, Jess. You moved out, you shut people out. You didn't even come to Marian's birthday. It's starting to feel like you're the one who left the family." And for a split second, I felt it, the old instinct. The one that whispered, "Maybe it's your fault." The one they'd trained into me, but not this time. I looked around that table at the downcast eyes, the careful silence, the cowardice disguised as politeness, and I said, "I didn't leave the family, I left the abuse." No one spoke. Not a single fork moved. My mother stood slowly. Her voice was ice. "We welcomed you here, Jessica." "You came in accusing and dramatic again. You should go." I nodded once. "I will." I turned toward the door, then stopped. But I'll be back. My father laughed again, but this time it was brittle. And next time, I added, I won't be holding the truth in a folder, I'll be saying it out loud. Then I left. I walked into the night air, heart racing, hands shaking, but head high. They thought they could twist the story forever, that their version of me would be the only one that survived. But they didn't know. I wasn't done yet. It was a birthday party this time, Uncle Dennis's 60th, a big one. My mother called it a milestone celebration on the invitation she sent to the family group chat, as if the last month hadn't happened, as if Emily hadn't been left alone, as if I hadn't walked out of their dinner like a fuse waiting to burn. She didn't send me an invite directly, but Jenna did, and I knew this was the moment. I didn't wear anything dramatic, no statement lipstick, no heels, just jeans, a soft blue sweater Emily had picked for me, because it makes your eyes look brave, and the same folder I had carried out of that last dinner. Only this time I wasn't holding it like a shield. I was carrying it like proof. Uncle Dennis's house was bigger than I remembered. The driveway was full of SUVs and minivans, and I passed 3 different cousins carrying salad bowls and balloon bundles as I walked up the steps. Nobody stopped me at the door. Inside, the air smelled like barbecue and nostalgia. Someone was already handing out sparkling cider, and a playlist of 70s hits played low under the hum of family chatter. I spotted my parents before they saw me. They stood near the buffet table, my mother in another pearl necklace, my father laughing a little too loudly at something my sister Megan had just said. Megan. I hadn't spoken to her since before everything. She stayed quiet, neutral, distant, just like always. I didn't approach them, not yet. Instead, I found Jenna, who gave me a quiet nod and gestured toward the hallway. They're all here, she whispered. All the people they've been whispering to. I took a breath. Good, I said. Then let's not waste it. Jenna tapped her glass with a fork lightly, but enough to catch attention. She smiled awkwardly as people turned toward her. Hey everyone, she said. Sorry to interrupt, but Jessica's here, and she has something she'd like to share. All eyes shifted to me. Some curious, some cold. A few surprised I had the audacity to show up again. Perfect. I stepped forward slow and steady and set the folder on the table beside the deviled eggs. I know a lot's been said lately, I began, mostly behind my back, and that's fine, I get it. No one likes drama. A few people looked away. But when that drama starts to threaten my child's safety, when it turns into lies whispered at dinner tables and texts sent in secret, I don't stay quiet. I opened the folder. This, I said, holding up the first sheet, is the police report from Albany, the one that confirms Emily was found alone after being left there by my parents. A pause. This, I continued, is the statement from the officer who called me that night. This is the timestamp on the 911 log. This is the inspector's letter clearing me entirely. I looked around the room. You've heard their version, now you'll see mine. I handed the folder to Jenna, who passed it to Megan. She hesitated, then slowly flipped to the first page. Her eyes widened as she read. This says you weren't even with Emily that weekend, she murmured. I wasn't, I said. They took her and left her. A hush settled over the room. Someone's fork clinked against a plate. My cousin Rachel leaned closer to Megan, scanning the page. Wait, it says here that Jessica was the one who filed the report, not her parents. Megan nodded slowly. And that she drove through the night to get her. There it was, the beginning, not a wave, not a roar, just a whisper of truth cracking through the fog. Jenna passed the folder down the table, and one by one people read in silence. No one looked at my parents, not yet, but I felt the air shift. I saw my father's jaw tighten. My mother's fingers dig into her wine glass. They didn't speak. They didn't dare. For once, they didn't have the room. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just stood still, steady, and said, You don't have to like me, but you will not lie about me again. That was it. No theatrics. No tantrums, just the truth finally placed where it belonged, right in front of them on paper, undeniable. A few minutes later, people returned to eating. But the energy was different now. There were fewer smiles in my parents' direction. Less warmth. More questions hovering just beneath polite conversation. And as I slipped back outside into the cool autumn air, I realized something important. They didn't need to scream to be exposed. All I had to do was show up with the truth. The message came the next morning. From Megan. "Can we talk? Alone?" I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Megan wasn't a texter. She was the kind of person who called when something was urgent and stayed politely distant when it was. We hadn't had a real conversation since Emily was born. I hesitated, then replied, "Yes, today?" 10 minutes later, we were sitting in the back corner of a coffee shop in Manchester, just the two of us, nursing identical black coffees like some kind of peace treaty. She looked tired. Her hair was tied back, no makeup, cardigan sleeves pushed up to the elbows, not dressed for war, dressed like someone who'd stopped pretending. I didn't start. I wanted to see what she came here to say. Megan set her cup down slowly. "I read the whole thing. Last night." I nodded. "I didn't know," she said, almost to herself. "I mean, I knew they were tough on us, controlling, but I didn't know they were capable of that." My throat tightened. "They were always like this, Megan. We just got used to calling it parenting." She didn't argue, just looked down at her cup. "I remember once," she said quietly, "when I was 14. I got an A- in biology, and Mom told me it was the first sign I'd probably end up pregnant and alone. I didn't cry. I just believed her." I reached across the table, barely brushing her hand. "They were never kind." "No," she said, "they were never kind, but I still thought they loved us in their own way, until I saw your daughter's name in a police report, until I realized what they'd done to her." The pain in her voice was quiet but raw. She looked at me then, really looked. "They hurt her to get to you," she said. "That's not parenting, that's cruelty." I swallowed hard. "I've been trying to say that for years." "I know," she whispered, "and I think I'm finally ready to hear it." There was a silence between us, not cold, not awkward, heavy with years of unspoken things. "I'm not here to defend them," Megan added. "I'm here to ask you something." "Okay." "There's a family reunion next weekend," she said. "Bigger than Uncle Dennis's thing, everyone's going, and I think it's time you spoke. Not with folders, not with paperwork, but with your voice." I stared at her, stunned. She shrugged, almost shy. "They're not going to stop unless someone finally says it out loud, not just in corners, not in whispers." "You really believe they'll listen?" "Some won't," she admitted. "But some will, some need to, especially the ones raising kids of their own now." I thought about Emily, about the night I found her in that Albany police station, about the silent drive home, her hand gripping mine the whole way. This wasn't about me anymore. Not really. It was about stopping the cycle before it touched someone else's child. I took a long sip of my coffee, staring out the window. "All right," I said, "I'll come." Megan let out a breath she'd clearly been holding. "We'll stand with you, Jenna and me. You won't be alone." I looked at her. "I don't need them to apologize." "I know. I just need them to stop lying." "They won't stop," she said. "Not on their own. Then I'll make them." We sat in silence for a few more minutes, just two women who had survived the same parents in different ways. Both scarred, both changed. "I'm proud of you," Megan said softly just before we left. "I was always too scared to be the first one to say something." I met her eyes. "You don't have to be first," I said. "Just don't be silent anymore." She nodded, and when we stood, she hugged me, not out of obligation, out of choice. And as I walked back to my car, I realized something I hadn't dared to believe before. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about legacy, and I was going to reclaim it. It was the largest reunion we'd had in years. 37 people crammed into the Manchester Grange Hall, with folding chairs arranged in a circle like some unspoken attempt at civility. Kids chased each other between the tables of potato salad and lemonade. Oldies music crackled from a Bluetooth speaker someone couldn't quite figure out how to turn down. I stood near the back, invisible, at least for now. Megan caught my eye from across the room and nodded. Jenna was already walking toward me, a gentle hand brushing my elbow. "They're all here," she whispered. "Even Anna Lane drove in from Syracuse, and yes, your parents came." I nodded, already feeling my pulse shift into something steadier, louder. "I'm ready." She tilted her head. "You sure?" "No," I said, "but I'm doing it anyway." They gave me 5 minutes, that's what Uncle Dennis called it. 5 minutes to share a few words, as if I were giving a toast, as if this were a wedding or retirement party and not a reckoning 20 years overdue. The chatter didn't stop as I walked to the center of the circle. People kept sipping lemonade, passing rolls. One toddler dropped a juice box and began wailing. But when I took the mic and said, "Hi," the room stilled. The sound of my voice did that, not the volume, the fact that it didn't tremble. "My name is Jessica," I began, as if they didn't all already know it. "And I'm here today not to celebrate, though I wish I could. I'm here to speak the truth. Because for the past few months, some of you have heard a version of my life that wasn't mine." There was a flicker in the crowd, a rustle. I caught my mother's frozen smile across the room, and my father's arms crossed like a barricade. I didn't stop. A few months ago, my 6-year-old daughter Emily was left alone in Albany by her grandparents, my parents. They told her to learn some manners and walked away. Left her in a food court, hours from home, alone. Gasps, murmurs, a sharp intake of breath from someone in the back. "I found her at a police station," I continued. "After driving all night, terrified out of my mind, she was calm, because I had taught her what to do in an emergency, because I am her mother. And I show up." My voice cracked, not with fear, but with fire. "And what did they do after that? They told you I was unstable, that Child Services had investigated me, that Emily was at risk in my home. But what they didn't tell you is that I filed the report. I documented everything. I provided proof. And the inspector cleared me entirely." I reached into my bag and held up the familiar folder. "I have the documents, the statements, the timeline. And I don't need to hand them out today because I already showed them to many of you last week. You've seen the truth." I looked around the room. Some faces were pale, some furious, some ashamed. "Good. Look," I said, softer now. "I know it's easier to pretend this is just family drama, to nod along with the loudest voice. But every time you stay silent, every time you choose comfort over truth, you let them keep hurting people. Not just me, not just Emily, you." A pause. Then I turned to my parents. "You don't have to like me," I said clearly, "but you will never lie about me again. You will never weaponize your legacy to cover your abuse." My mother's mouth opened. My father leaned forward, red-faced, but before they could speak, Uncle Dennis raised a hand. "Let her finish," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried, and they sat back. That silence, the one that followed, wasn't empty, it was accountability. "I'm not asking for revenge," I said. "I'm asking for something harder, something louder." I looked at each face. Cousins, aunts, people who'd babysat me, hugged me at graduations, passed me bowls of stuffing at Thanksgiving while ignoring the bruises beneath the surface. "I'm asking you to stop pretending, to stop letting shame speak louder than love." No one clapped. There was no triumphant applause, but one by one I saw them look at me instead of my parents. Jenna stood. Then Megan. Then a few more, no words, just alignment. And as I stepped away from the mic, heart pounding, hands still shaking, I realized something. I hadn't come to burn it all down. I'd come to set myself free. A week passed after the reunion. No calls, no texts, no surprise knocks on the door. The silence was almost disorienting after everything. Not peaceful, but strangely hollow. Like the house still remembered the echo of the war and was now holding its breath. Then came the voicemail. It was early morning and I was packing Emily's lunch, turkey, apples, a dinosaur sticker for her water bottle when my phone buzzed. "Dad," voicemail, no text, just the alert. I played it on speaker without thinking. His voice was quieter than usual. Less of that arrogant tilt. More desperation, maybe, or something trying to pass for it. "Jess, oh, we've had some issues this week. Power's been cut off, some other things. If you could lend a hand just a little, we could really use your help. I'm sure Emily would want to know her grandparents are okay." I stared at the phone as it clicked off. Emily stood nearby, velcroing her shoes with her usual determination. She didn't ask who the message was from. She didn't have to. "They want something again," she said simply. I knelt in front of her. "Yes, baby, they do." She tilted her head. "Are we going to help them?" That moment hurt more than anything they'd ever said about me, not because she wanted to help, but because she still believed kindness was the right thing to give even to people who hadn't earned it. I kissed her cheek. "Maybe," I said, "but they'll have to talk to you first." Emily blinked. "Why?" "Because you're the one they hurt." After drop-off, I sat with my laptop for a long time. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done, so I opened my email, clicked compose, typed in my father's address. "Subject, Ray. Your message, Dad. If you truly need help, I'm willing to consider it. But I won't speak to either of you until you apologize to Emily." Not to me, to her. You left her alone in a public place to teach her a lesson. You turned your backs on her safety, then tried to punish me for reacting like a mother should. If you think I will allow her to forget that without acknowledgement, you don't know me at all. You will not be invited in. You will not be coddled. You will not manipulate her through me. You will look her in the eye and say you were wrong, or you will stay gone. Jessica, I didn't reread it. I hit send and felt nothing. Not guilt, not relief, just finality. The next evening I heard a knock, 2 short raps, pause, then one more. I opened the door to find them both standing there. My father looked like a man who had aged 10 years in a month. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair uncombed. My mother stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes scanning the hallway behind me as if expecting reinforcements. They didn't speak, not right away. Emily appeared beside me in the doorway, silent, small but unafraid. My father cleared his throat. Emily, she stepped half behind my leg, no greeting, no warmth. We owe you an apology, he said. I made a mistake, we both did. My mother opened her mouth, then miraculously shut it again. You should never have been left alone, he added. We were wrong, I'm sorry. Emily didn't say anything. Not one word. She didn't nod, didn't cry, just stood still, arms folded, chin slightly tilted like she was waiting for me to decide what happened next. I bent slightly and whispered, "You want them to come in?" She shook her head, so I turned back to them. She said no. My mother's mouth fell open. But we came here to... You came here, I cut in, because your power got shut off, not because you love her. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I closed the door. Not with a slam, not with rage, with peace. They didn't knock again. And inside, Emily took my hand and pulled me toward the couch. I want to paint, she said. So we painted. Dinosaurs again, with wings this time. Under a sky she painted blue and gold because she said those are brave colors. And for the first time since Albany, she hummed while she worked. A year later, the apartment smells like cinnamon and lavender. Not because I've become some domestic goddess, but because Emily's decided she's in charge of vibes now, which, in her words, means lighting every candle I've ever owned and arranging them like fairy circles on every windowsill. We live in a 3rd-floor walk-up now. Brighter, smaller, but not cramped. The kind of place where the sun pours in through old windows and makes even the dust look golden. Emily painted a mural on her bedroom wall. A sky full of clouds shaped like elephants and ducks and pizza slices. I let her, because some things don't need to be neat to be perfect. And above our couch hangs her most recent masterpiece, 2 small figures hand in hand, under a sky that shifts from stormy gray to sky blue. I asked her what it meant. She just said, us. I used to think healing would come with a dramatic flourish, some big cinematic moment where I'd feel triumphant and whole again. But instead, it arrived in quiet rituals, her laughter echoing down the hallway, the click of my keyboard while she colors nearby, a text from Megan that says, "Thinking of you, let's do brunch soon." Waking up and realizing I don't start every day with dread. No legal battle, no viral takedown, just this. This ordinary peace I fought like hell for. And the best part, no one gave it to me. I built it from the rubble, from the guilt, from the lies they told and the silence I once kept. A few weeks ago, Jenna mentioned that my parents still live in the farmhouse, that the power's back on, but the holiday invitations have dried up. Fewer family photos on Facebook, less talk of traditions and birthdays. I don't feel smug about it, just distant, like remembering a language I no longer speak. Emily sometimes asks about them, not often. Just in passing, like she's checking to see if I'm still telling the same truth, and I always am. They made a mistake, I say, and until they fix it, they don't get to be close. She nods, simple as that. Kids understand boundaries better than adults sometimes. Today we're making pancakes. She insists on flipping her own, and they land in lopsided splats that she calls abstract breakfast. She turns to me, grinning, batter on her cheek. "Are we gonna be okay forever?" she asks. And I take a breath, not because I don't know the answer, but because I want to say it right. "We already are," I say, "because we don't wait for anyone to choose us anymore." She thinks about that for a second, then nods. "Yeah," she agrees. "We choose us first." I could cry, but I don't. I just hand her the syrup, sit down beside her, and marvel at the strange, incredible miracle of surviving something that was never meant to break me, but almost did. And as we eat our imperfect pancakes under that crooked painting of a blue and gold sky, I know this much is true. Family isn't who you're born to, it's who protects you. And we, Emily and I, we protect each other every single day.